I'm so glad to be in a conversation today about museums and culture. Marcus Collins is a professor in marketing at the Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan, which he's also an alum of. Before that, in agency world, Marcus was head of strategy at the great agency Wieden and Kennedy and did hands-on practitioner work within the client base. Before that, most notably as head of digital strategy for the one and only Beyonce. Marcus came out with an amazing book, which I found my way to about 18 months ago, called For the Culture. It's not about museums, but it's about culture and it's about people. And that's what it takes for institutions, brands, entertainers to figure out how to play a role in the real lived lives of humans who we need to attract to support our missions and our businesses. Marcus, great to be in conversation with you again. I'm going to kick it off by saying, as I've said to you before, it's interesting to me that museums, among others, think of themselves as cultural institutions, but you point out that institutions don't make culture, people do.
Uh, Seth Godin says it this way: the culture moves forward on the basis of one simple question: do people like me do something like this? And he's absolutely right. Do people like me do something like this? The way we self-identify, our identity, become the anchor by which we see the world and the expectations of how we navigate through the world. For instance, I'm a Collins, and we believe family and church come first. Therefore, Sunday mornings, I'm in the church sanctuary. If not, I get a passive-aggressive call from my mother in the afternoon, right? Like, how was your morning, Marcus? Right? And listen, there are no stone tablets that I signed in blood saying that I'm going to go to church, but I do this. Why? Because that's expected of people like me. And every single identity marker to which we subscribe, our personhood, we abide by the expectations of that identity, right? I think of it as this rubric: I am a, we believe this, therefore I. I am a Collins. We believe family and church come first. Therefore, Sunday mornings, I'm in the church sanctuary. And every single one of us abide by this rubric for people like us. And until we say, you know what, I don't think I believe that anymore. And because I
Uh-huh.
don't believe that anymore, not only do we not do the behaviors, but we also unsubscribe our identity. We go, I must not be that, because if I were that, then I would believe this and therefore do these things. So we find another identity marker that's much more aligned to our ideology, our beliefs about the world, and our subsequent behaviors become normal for people like them.
You write about so well in the book, and going back to the work of Emil Durkheim, talk about culture is not the work of the producer. Culture is the work of people who develop cultural affinities and subscriptions. And it's what you, I love that phrase, it's what people like me do.
That's right. Emil Durkheim, one of the founding fathers of sociology, talked about culture as a system of conventions and expectations that demarcate who we are and govern what people like us do. It is of the people. It's an operating system that governs the people. And this operating system is anchored in our identity, who we are, which informs how we see the world. That's why for some, cow is leather, for others, a deity, and for some, it's dinner. Which one is it? Depends on who you are and how you see the world. So, because of who we are, we see the world a certain way, and then we engage in the world accordingly, right? There are a set of expectations of how we adorn ourselves, artifacts, behaviors. What are the social norms and traditions of people like us? Language. These are the vernacular, the colloquialisms, the code words that we use to communicate. The system by which we're able to engage in the exchange of communications between people like us, and those uh, social facts, as Emil Durkheim referred to them, are expressed, project through cultural production, art, literature, film, television, music, movies, poetry, pottery, podcasts, and brands and branded products, in fact, are all ways by which we peacock ourselves to the world. So institutions like museums become the way by which these works are curated. Right? Not every bit of work, but it is a curation of work that are expressions of these people, reflections of how they see the world, so that we might be able, as mere mortals, that we might be able to apprehend the world through their lenses by widening the aperture by which the world presents itself to us.
You talk about the merit of what people in cultural production do, which sometimes can make them feel like adapting to cultural subscriptions. In the museum world, sometimes people say, "Well, we don't want to dumb it down." Talk a little about what we miss when we say that.
Yeah, well, to one end, we have to be able to communicate in such a way that people can understand. The great communicators know this idea that it's not what you say, it's what people hear. So while our intent as curators, when it comes to museums, are to communicate these things to this highest fidelity possible, if it's missed by the museum visitor, if it's missed by the public, then what service did it really do? The same thing kind of goes in academia. The world I occupy, at least half of my world outside of the practicing world, is academia, and we write things that are meant to be exact. Right, the writing of academic work is very, very exact. We do that to pay a great mind to the integrity of the ideas, realizing that constructs, the words that we use, that we scaffold ideas on, have to be foundational and not squishy. But academic reading, academic literature is cumbersome. It's not easy to read. It's not very fun to read either. Therefore, there aren't a lot of people who read academic work. But you have scholars, authors that are able to take these rigorously interrogated ideas and translate them for the people so that people understand. The Malcolm Gladwells of the world, really, really good at this, translating the cultural work of scholars, of academics, so that the general public are able to understand it, interpret it, and be better from it. I would argue that in many ways, the curation of museums do the exact same thing. The good ones do, the better ones do, rather. They're able to take what these great producers have created and translate it such that the general public are able to understand the intent of the author, of the creator, of the producer, but also enable the visitor, the museum visitor, to translate through their own meaning-making lenses, their own cultural subscription, such that they're able to see the world more broadly. That is an unbelievable talent to do, which is why I think museums play such an important role in society.
And what they need to do is figure out how do you, the end result being that person tells other people like them
That's
that
right.
this is something we should do, right?
That's right. That's right. And that's how culture is transmitted. The social transmission happens from the stories we tell people like us. And these stories
Yeah.
that we tell, this is the primary vehicle for cultural creation. I tell a story, and those stories become repeated within people like me, and it becomes reality for people like me. And because this is our reality, the way we see the world, we therefore navigate the world accordingly. So we want to inspire people to go preach the gospel on behalf of the cultural work that's being curated in these four walls that we call museums.
Remuseum has documented something we know, but we kind of quantified is that museums, art museums have radically changed their missions from 40 years ago being centered on objects, which they would study and present for the benefit of the public, kind of passive public in that phrasing, to now missions that are 90% centering the public, saying we want to serve and engage everyone with art. One of the things is that they typically say we want to welcome everyone in our community. We want to embrace everyone. Talk a little bit about how the challenges of marketing to everyone.
But there's no such thing as everyone.
Yeah.
Not only is no such thing as everyone, it's also empirically impossible to reach everyone. You don't have the resources. Like Google doesn't have the resources to reach everyone because not everyone is the same. Like even twins aren't the same. And because everyone's not the same, trying to deliver a message that every single person will be able to adopt and lean into, it is unfathomable. Which is why in marketing we segment the market where everyone's different, where a heterogeneous market exists, where everyone is unique. We put them in homogeneous like clusters. We segment them into clusters where they're more alike than they are different, and we target the people that are most likely to adopt behavior, to move. So in the case of museums, we're open to everyone. Sure, we want everyone to come in, right? But what we're really after are the curious, the people who actually want to see the world differently, people who are actually curious about a world beyond their own. And therefore, they go to these institutions of cultural curation to get an understanding of a world that is not theirs. I spend a lot of time working with brands like McDonald's, for instance. And, I would tell McDonald's, just like I tell museums, that, hey, listen, you serve fries to everybody. Please, everybody's welcome. Over 1 billion served. Like, come on in. We're
Yeah.
happy to serve you fries, but that's not who we're targeting. It's not who we're after. The same thing with Nike. Hey, anybody can wear Nike sneakers. I'm sure Nike would be very happy about that, right? But Nike's going after athletes. right? That's who
Right.
they're targeting. And the same thing goes when it comes to museums. The museum has a point of view about the world broadly. Museums as an institution, but each individual museum has a very unique point of view about the way it sees the world and how it serves society, how it serves the public with its works, with its curatorial works, its curatorial service. Ergo, because the institution, the museum sees the world a certain way, the target becomes people who see the world the way they do.
What I say is that museums can be for anyone, but they can't be for everyone.
That's right. Yes,
Uh,
well put. Well said.
you make the great point that all mainstream movements begin as fringe, right?
Everything starts that way. Everything that's cool now was once weird. Everything that's normal now was once cringe until it becomes normal, right? This is how every single thing, how we dress, what we watch, what we drive, where we eat, what we do, all these things started as a fringe subcultural thing that propagated into the population to become normal. And hopefully, like all things, this too will pick up steam and propagate, diffuse into the population such that, empathy becomes normal again.
The Avengers started in weird nerdy comic culture, right? Now
Yeah,
the biggest entertainment franchise in the world, right?
yeah, 20 years ago, if you were into comic books, you were a nerd. You were a dork. You were weird, right? But now comic books are the most, or comic book IP is the most consumed IP there is, right? The movies that are seen the most typically come from these superheroes. Same thing with gaming. If you were into gaming 20 years ago, you were a loser. Now gaming is super popular, right? It's normal, it's cool, it's a multi-billion dollar industry. Everything starts that way. 20 years ago, if you wore sweatpants out in public, you had basically given up on life, right? But now athleisure is a multi-billion
Yeah.
dollar industry.
And museums have this because almost every great piece of art was made by someone who was a rejected freak at the
Exactly.
time, right? So how
Exactly.
can we embrace that spirit of, the Impressionists were the outcasts. Van Gogh, never made a dime and now now we worship him, right? So
That's the curation of culture. And I think that is the it's one of the shining stars of the cultural institution that is a museum. That it takes these stories, these works, these artifacts, these productions, these creations that in any given time could have been ignored, but they
yeah.
captured the zeitgeist. They captured a moment in time and the meanings that were being negotiated and constructed during that time, such that we in present time can get a better understanding of the world in which we live in today by apprehending the world through the lenses of someone yesterday so that we might be better prepared for tomorrow.
When I found myself running a museum, one of the things I found that was like taken for granted was that we were a place.
Yeah,
There are not a lot of places for people who don't necessarily agree to be together. So maybe the
yeah,
target audience for museums should be that segment that we're not trying to change their minds. We recognize they are open to being in the same place with people they don't agree with.
that's right. The curious. I mean,
Yeah.
it takes a lot of courage to be curious, I think, to say, hey, I wonder if my worldview is incomplete. It takes a lot of courage to say, you know what, I'm going to put myself in places where I'm uncomfortable. Uncomfortable in that I'm not with people that I trust, not with people that I
Yeah.
know, not people where I know that my safety is guarded, that I might be, emotionally impacted by what I hear, what I see, what I experience. It takes great, great courage to do that. And those who are willing to do that, I think should be applauded. I think people who are willing to say, "Oh man, like I thought it was this way, but maybe it's not. I should go investigate this." Those are the kind of people that I think push society forward.
One final question kind of coming at you as both an academic and a practitioner. I'm going to share a screen.
Okay.
This is a story about museums from the last week. We've seen some others. Not a great time. So if you can read
Yeah.
this was, people like me listen to NPR, as you can tell from watching
Sure.
this. So museums had a rough 2025. Report shows lower attendance, lost grants, less money, and the article gets into some of that being a trickle down of executive orders from the White House. So
Sure.
to an industry in this situation, what would be your marketing one, two, three?
So the first thing I would do is to identify who you are. That is, what do you believe? Not what you do, but why do you do it, right? As Simon Sinek would put it, your conviction. Like, how does the organization see the world? and then go find the people who see the world the way you do and preach the gospel, preach that ideology. And I like the way you framed this earlier is that we have to stop thinking about museums as a place, as a destination, right? And think of it as an idea, that it is a curatorial experience. And why do we engage in it? So that we might see the world a little more vividly. So we might experience the world in a more pluralistic expression than our own. And if you preach the gospel, people will see the world that way. They'll go, you know what, man, I think I'm not just going to go be a part of this. I'm going to evangelize this because it is an extension of who I am. The best consumer brands know this and have benefited from this. The museum industry has to think about themselves as such.
It's not a time to evangelists don't hide under a bushel, right?
Nah, you got to go
They
preach
go
the
out.
gospel. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. What's the good of a light hidden under a bushel, right?
Yeah.
You got to go be the light. Go preach the gospel, so that people go, yes, absolutely, and they get on board.
Well, Marcus Collins from Ann Arbor, Michigan, thank you so much. You've given a good homily for the museum field, and I'm excited to share it. Really,
Oh,
really appreciate it. Thank you.
thanks so much for having me. It's always a pleasure.